Hi there, I'm Margie from Hush Education, and I'm here to talk to you today about puberty and penises, which means we're going to talk about some sex-specific puberty changes that happen to people who have a penis, to people who have testicles. And a lot of times those people are labelled male or boy or man, so you may hear me using those words today. We are, of course, always aware that some people who have these body parts may identify as female, or they may identify as anywhere else along that gender spectrum as well. Just before I start talking about bodies, penises, and all the exciting and interesting things that can happen because people have a penis and have testicles as well, I want to show you a couple of really good books that might be for children to read, or they might also be for someone's grown up, their adult who might be watching with them, to have a look at and read as well. Now the first one is quite specific. It is called A Secret Boy's Business, and this one does talk about both the physical and the emotional changes that happen during the puberty years. It does help boys to understand a little bit more about their bodies. Very simple language, fun illustrations. I enjoy it, particularly for younger people, though perhaps someone from about the age of 7 or 8 upwards. One of my favourite parts of this book is a poem about penises that I like to read out when I'm talking about this. Just give you a little idea. Penises come in various sizes, different colours, shapes and guises. Longer, thinner, short or thick, different names. Cock, willy, dick. A curve to the left, a bend to the right, makes each one a different sight. So if you wonder about your form, remember, to be different is the norm. And there's a great illustrations there as well. So a really good one for starting out. There's another one here that's called Puberty Boy, and that one is by Jeff Price. There's a whole range. If you go to a bookstore, there's lots and lots of books that might be sex specific or might be for everybody when they talk about puberty. But this is a good one. I got mine from Family Planning Victoria, but they are available other places. Have a look online as well. The first one, of course, as well as this one, which is called Special Boys Business, are available from our Hush Education store. It's an online store, www.husheducation.com.au/store. This is a great one, very, very visual, so it might be for someone with cognitive disability or having a little bit of extra help to be a person going through puberty. But it's also just for people who are a little less interested in lots of words and prefer to do their learning with lots of visuals and lots of pictures as well. So again, available from our store, Special Boys Business. Now, if you've got a grown-up there with you, or if you want to talk to them later, one of the books that was very, very popular way back last century in the 1970s and 80s is called What's Happening to Me. And this is a funny, almost a cartoon format book that goes through all sorts of information about puberty and bodies and growing up. And I find it very, very popular with young people, particularly I find with some boys who want to find out a little bit more about puberty. Available in all the stores, very easy to get hold of. What's Happening to Me. A little bit old, a little bit gendered, but still great information. One of my favourite books, which is available again at the Hush Education store, is called Sex is a Funny Word. Now this one in particular is a great resource for every person going through puberty. It's also a little bit less gendered. It's got a lot more about bodies in general rather than specific or particular bodies. So it's a great one to have a look at. It says down here, a book about bodies, feelings, and you. And this book also has quite a bit of protective behaviours or body safety information in it as well. Lucky last one to show you today is called It's Perfectly Normal. Now these books, It's Perfectly Normal, It's Not the Stalk, are absolutely fantastic books by Roby Harris for all different types of information. This one talks about puberty, sex, sexual health, reproduction, birth control, pregnancy, birth, families, LGBT, the internet, sexual abuse, and also STIs. So there's a lot of information there. It's a book that can last for a really long time. You could start out with this book with someone who's about 10 or 11 or 12, and they can keep looking at it and reading it up until their mid to late teens as well. So it's called It's Perfectly Normal by Roby Harris. Another great one. All right, let's get started talking to people or about people who have a penis and scrotum and testicles and what sorts of things happen to them specifically during the puberty years. And you know, one of the main things that happens for these bodies is that the pituitary gland, remember we said it's found at the base of the brain, sends a hormonal message directly to the sex organs that are called the testicles. And this message tells the testicles to start maturing, to start developing. So not only does the scrotum, the outside part, change during puberty years, it becomes larger, it becomes more wrinkled, darker in colour, and of course will sprout a covering of hair. But it also says to the testicles inside the scrotum that it is time for them to start producing the male sex cell, and that is called sperm. Now sperm are microscopic cells. That means they're so incredibly tiny you can't see them without a very strong microscope. To let you know how very small they are, if you looked at my littlest fingernail there, millions and millions of sperm would fit onto that fingernail. So they're far too tiny for you to be able to see with your eyes. You would need to use a microscope to be able to see them. Now, these sperm are produced in millions and millions and millions inside the testicles. And what I've got here is a diagram, a side-on view of a male body. So I'll just explain what parts we've got. This is the outside the bottom. This part here is called the rectum and the anus. That's where poop comes out, basically. This is the tailbone, the bottom of someone's spine. We have here the penis. You might be able to recognise that. From the penis, we have the scrotum surrounding the testicles. Now, the testicles contain structures that are called tubules, and the tubules are where the millions and millions of sperm are produced. They travel to this green part here. It's not actually green in real life. It looks a little bit like a cabbage leaf here. But this is called the epididymis, and the epididymis is where those sperm start to mature into moving, living cells. They travel along this very long, very, very fine tube that's called the vas deferens. And the vas deferens carries the sperm all the way past the bladder. So this is where wee is stored in these bodies. And it goes past this part here that's called the seminal vesicle. We'll talk about that. And also this part here that's called the prostate. And eventually that tube actually joins up with the ureter, the tube that's going into the penis. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a little while. So what I've said is the testicles are responsible for creating these millions and millions and millions of sperm every single day. Do you know what? The testicles are basically a sperm making factory. That's what they do. They start this job during the puberty years, and for most people with testicles, that sperm production can continue right up into old age and even sometimes up until somebody dies. So it's a very, very long job that needs to do. Now, of course, one of the things that can happen, particularly in the puberty years, the early years of sperm production, is that the testicle factory, the sperm making factory, hasn't sorted out supply and demand. So sometimes the testicles can be producing too much sperm. And when this happens, one of the things that can possibly happen is that the body needs to work out a way to get rid of some of the excess sperm, some of the extra that's been made and is not required. Now, very often the sperm that's being produced each day is just dissolves and reabsorbed back into the system. But sometimes that sperm is spontaneously released from the male body. What that means, it happens all by itself. It's not something someone has caused to happen or someone has asked to happen. Now, when this happens, we have a word that we use. People call that a wet dream, or sometimes they call it, big scientific name, nocturnal emission. Nocturnal means nighttime, emission means coming out. And wet dreams are something that is more likely to happen during the puberty years, but can happen at any time throughout what we're going to call a male's lifetime. And when a wet dream happens, it is when a young person is very, very deeply sound asleep. This is why they have no control over it happening. While our person is asleep, their body is very, very relaxed, and they may find that they're dreaming. Now, they could be having a silly dream, an exciting dream, but very often it's a bit of a sexy dream. And they're having this sexy dream while they're asleep, and one of the things that happens is the penis, which usually just hangs down between the legs, is called flaccid. In this stage, it becomes erect, and that means it becomes firm or stiff and stands up. Now, you might have heard people talk about boners or stiffies, and what they're talking about is when the penis becomes erect. So our young person is sound asleep, very, very relaxed. They're having this dream, and their penis is erect. It's sticking straight up away from their body, and the excess of sperm that's been produced, that's been building up in the body, is released through the erect penis, and it comes out of their body as a clear or a milky white, sticky type of fluid. Now, it's milky white and sticky because the sperm that we've been talking about join with the fluid that's called semen when they go past this part of the body. And semen is almost like the river that the sperm need to be able to move around, to swim along in. And this tiny amount of sperm and semen comes out of the male's body. It might go onto their underwear, it might go onto their pyjama pants, it might go onto their bed sheets. It's actually a really small amount, usually no more than about a teaspoonful of fluid. But it can spread quite a bit, and it can feel a little bit sticky and a little bit uncomfortable if someone wakes up at that stage. Usually someone will wake up the next morning and find a bit of a stiff area on their clothes or on their bed sheets as well. So when this happens, it's called a spontaneous nocturnal emission, or it's called a wet dream. The amount of fluid, as I said, is only a very, very small amount. So it's not like someone wetting their bed when they've done a wee in their sleep, for instance, which is very common and can happen as well. Also, for a wee to come out of the body, there's no erection. So that's another difference that happens. Do you know, some people will have quite frequent wet dreams, particularly in the early years of puberty. Some people will have occasional wet dreams, and some people won't have them at all. A lot of times when I'm in schools, people will say to me, well, what can a boy use like girls have a pad? And unfortunately or fortunately, wet dreams don't happen on any predictable basis. They're not a cycle like periods are, for instance. So there's no way of knowing when and if this is going to happen. It does only happen when someone's asleep. So there's no chance of it happening as someone's just walking around the street or going about their business at school. And there isn't any way that people can protect their clothing or their bed linen because they don't know if it's likely to happen or if it's not likely to happen at all. So it's not something you need to worry about. It's a very, very normal or typical part of growing up and going through puberty. In fact, it's a great sign that all these organs in the body are starting to mature, starting to prepare this body for a time in the future when they perhaps hope to become a father and help create a baby, which is what sperm is for. Do you know the other thing that happens when a boy in particular starts to go through the puberty years is he may find that erections, that stiffening of the penis, start to happen a lot more often. Now, baby boys have erections from the time that they are growing and developing inside their mum's uterus. It happens from birth, and it continues to happen for most people with a penis right up again until their very old age. But during a puberty years, some young people might find that erections are happening just out of the blue for no reason at all in the middle of a maths lesson, or when someone's standing in front of their class or at the pool with their bathers on. We call these spontaneous erections. It means they're not happening because someone is causing them to happen, either by thinking about something exciting or about friction or touching their bodies. These happen just because of normal nerves firing in the body. And the best thing that you can do when that happens is try to ignore it, try not to think about it, try not to worry about it. They will go away very quickly. And be aware that most people are not looking at your crotch all the time, waiting to see if you have an erection or if you don't have an erection. Because some people do worry about that a little bit as well. You know, the other thing that we find for young men is that they can be a little bit worried about the sperm coming out of their body when they don't want it to happen. And this is actually not possible. And the reason it's not possible is this gland here actually acts a little bit like the train gates. When the train gates are down, the train can go through and the car cannot. When the train gates are up, trains aren't allowed to go through, but the cars can go through. And the same thing happens here. Remember we said that the sperm comes out the same tube and the same opening in these bodies as wee does. And of course, sperm and wee can't come out at the same time. And that's because these little gates up here, this gland says when the penis is erect, the opening to the bladder is closed off. And it means we won't come out. When the penis is flaccid or soft, the opening for sperm is closed off, which means we can come out, but sperm can't come out. It's not possible for someone to be walking along the street or riding along on their bike and suddenly have sperm come out of their body. In most cases for males, when the penis is very erect, it's quite difficult for them to be able to pee at all. And a lot of young men will experience what we call morning erections. And that can be because of a little bit of a full bladder or for other reasons. And it needs to subside a little bit before that person is able to go to the toilet in the morning. I think it's really important to remember that just because an erection happens does not automatically lead to ejaculation, which is what we call the release of sperm. Ejaculation only happens either during a nocturnal emission, a wet dream, when someone's sound asleep, very relaxed, or when someone causes that to happen, either by touching their own penis, their own body, or during sexual intercourse, for instance, or sexual activity when someone's older. If you've got any more questions about puberty and penises and bodies, you are always welcome to email us at inquiries@husheducation.com.au. You can get your grown-up to messenger us on Facebook, or you can even write us an email or a question yourself as well. But today's talk was about puberty and penises. Tomorrow or the next time we put up a video, it's going to be for everybody, and it's going to be about some of those social, emotional changes that are a really big part of going through puberty. Puberty is not just about bodies. Puberty is about the way people think, the way people feel, and of course the way they relate to other people, and that's an important part of what we'll be talking about. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.